Hi, can you hear me now? Well, I'm going to bed pretty soon, Abraham Lincoln. But that's what makes this the last call for Talk-ahol. It's because I'm tired. You see, it's one of those things that sneaks up on you, like a lion or a tiger or swiper. Swiper no swiping. Despite her admonition that Swiper refrain from his swiping behavior, I hear that she never really did get him to change and ended up in prison. She wrote him letters and then they started to trickle off. And by the time he got out of prison, she hadn't spoken to him for years. And, he's real nervous, but worked up his courage and he went and knocked on her door. He looked her up, she was still Dora. She had the same maiden name. She wasn't married apparently, as far as he could tell. And when he got there and knocked on the door, Dora opened up the door and she was like, "Oh God! Oh my God!" And closed the door and ran away. And Swiper was like, "What the hell, Dora?" I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting story. I read it on TMZ. In case you weren't aware of this, TMZ has a master list of people they consider to be celebrities. If you don't make the list, you don't make the list. If you do make the list, then your stories about you are juicy, as they say in the TMZ world. So, Dora makes the list, She's a celebrity. Swiper, interestingly, does not make the list independently of Dora, but does make the list if the story includes Dora, which is to say he doesn't make the list. Dora makes the list. It's one of the most exclusive lists in town to get onto, TMZ's celebrity list. And of course, it's the only way to be a real official celebrity. We're praising the Lord tonight. Let's sous vide it. Let's sous vide the Lord instead. Ooh, I know. Let's rotisserie. Like in the supermarket. Where do they have the best rotisseries? Well, sure. You might argue the rotisserie store. That's not right. I need to tell my second need a 30 sounds a lot better idea. Abraham, it's diminishing returns. You need to understand this. I currently get 30 milligrams a day total of IR. But and that's about right. But if I had more, it would end up playing out the same, basically. I guess up to a certain point. Right now, I find myself, taking some days, rare days 2, which is what I'm prescribed, and some days 3. But by the end of my stretch time, I've become scattered, easily frustrated, and FI prone in general. Arabs cannot into AP. What? Can't into P? They can't into P? I don't know what that means. Dora is a show about a Mexican girl trying to escape over the border, only to be met by a grumpy old troll who lives under the bridge, which is Border Patrol. That's nice. That's good metaphor analysis. I like that. I just thought it was a story about a girl who was trying to reform a kleptomaniac monkey, and while concurrently find her way around, even though she had gotten lost. Obviously, she still had her backpack, which helped her to engage in an incredibly long and arduous adventure, even though she's just a little girl with a klepto monkey, and invariably managed to take just good enough care of herself. Actually, pretty impressive lady. Pretty impressive. Get with the program. Are you serious, Morridge? I'm so excited by that. Logan Paul? Not Jake Paul? I don't even think Logan Paul is the better boxer of the two. I guess that's why he's going first. Then Jake Paul will get revenge, presumably. And then Jake Paul will get his ass whooped too. Ghost says you're lying though, Morridge. No. Floyd Mayweather is not he's not the kind of boxer like Mike Tyson that people get scared to go in the ring with because they're gonna get brain damage or whatever. Or the OG George Foreman. Back before Ali beat him, George Foreman was like, he was like Tyson when Tyson was young. He was just like freakishly powerful with his punches. If you got hit by him, it wasn't like a normal person's punch. What type is Mike Tyson? ISFP? Not with Mayweather. Come on. Mayweather's not that tough compared to... I mean, he's an incredibly good boxer. Like, I think he's incredibly difficult to beat in the ring because he's very, very good at his sport. But that doesn't mean he's an especially strong offensive fighter. He's good enough, Darren Kowalski, I don't think you're going to get a lot of pushback from anybody around here. How about that? I don't think you're going to find many takers for that argument. I think almost everybody will agree with you that the Paul family produced a couple of popular and one might say successful sons, and definitely also they produced one really smart son, but they had to divide him into two. Yeah, it wouldn't actually surprise me if Logan Paul is actually quite smart because he is an ESTP. I have no reason to say Logan Paul is dumb. I have some little bit of reason to say Jake Paul is dumb because even that's kind of secondhand hearsay. Rachel's told me about it. I really don't know anything about them except for the story that one of them got kicked off YouTube because of the dead body in Japan. I think so. This is just but again, I am not. This is really just wild speculation based on mostly hearsay of what other people have said about each of them, and I don't think I've ever really heard an interview of them, or I have no idea what their old YouTube channels used to be like. I don't know. So I don't even have a clear sense of what either of them speaks like. That one, then you'd have good cause to say, better bring a body bag. I think they are both probably SC dumps. I mean, they both went into boxing. Hey, I don't dwell in flesh, I dwell as flesh. Okay? You know, it may very well be wrong to try to force people to use your personal pronouns you prefer, but it's definitely not wrong to force people to use the prepositions you prefer. Or in this case, to force people to change from a preposition to a subordinating conjunction. That's fair. Nobody should object to that. Hey, what did I say? No more prepositions. Except for around. Around's fine. For you. For me, it's fine. See, I just used a couple of them. That's fine. You see how nothing bad happened? Every time you use it, you sound dumb. What is more interesting than MBTI theory stuff? I mean, Darren Kowalski, I'd point out that we haven't talked about it at all tonight until you just brought it up. Why do you think do you think that we here qualify as the people who are inexplicably and probably wrongly in some sense or unwisely in some sense overly fixated on this one specific idea? Would you think that we qualify as such individuals? The Deathbound crew. Who smoked Chanja? Brr, brr. Why is my phone making noises? That always makes me think, gosh darn it. I think that you are overly fixated, and that means you like to stick people in boxes that don't belong. Okay, well, can you give me an example of me sticking somebody into a box in which they don't belong? What would that mean, for example? Would it require me to reject a person's behavior or statement on the grounds that that's not you, or is there some other criterion you're using? How to know if you are in a relationship with a gaslighter or maybe just an angry old ESTJ? Well, an angry old ESTJ probably won't consistently hammer you about what's wrong with you in a specific way that links consistently across instances. That's true. The fact that people sometimes feel, sometimes think, and generally, to some extent, do both, is a good observation to help establish that probably something like cognitive functions exists to explain that reality. It's true. So, if people were always feeling and always thinking and always remembering and always ideating at the same time, then that would be a good way to disprove cognitive functions. So you are correct that if anybody's making that claim, then they are either trying to disprove cognitive functions or are confused or something. A cognitive function is a channel of attention or a manner of attention, a way of paying attention. And we can clearly distinguish between different kinds of manners of attention on the grounds. Listen, AAZZ, you do not need to be, there are no classes you need to take before you can get into this one, all right? I have no requirements, nor do I think it's appropriate to shame someone for their lack of knowledge about cognitive functions. I get the fact that people come in here and often come in with the same sort of objections that the last 10 people who came in uninformed came in with. But they don't know that, and I want them to be welcome here anyway, you know? So cognitive function is a way of paying attention. We can distinguish between the fact that there are different kinds of ways of paying attention by simply pointing out that I can't both read a book and understand what it's saying while concurrently giving a speech about a different topic. You know, that's okay, ZZ. When you said sorry, then I immediately felt guilty. So what was I saying? Oh, right, cognitive functions and stuff. Like, if for no other reason, it's a useful set of naturally occurring. Let's say we weren't even to make any kind of modeling claims. It's a useful set of terms that represent a naturally occurring set of divisions between people that can be mapped out just in terms of their argumentational frames. So people argue with different justifications, different kinds of justifications. People are convinced by different kinds of justifications. And people find different sorts of things satisfying. So, like, I enjoy watching football on TV with my dad, or even just by myself, or with Rachel, or whatever. And I was thinking about that as I was watching it today. That, of course, the fact that I'm watching something on TV means it's already been rendered onto a metaphysical plane. And what functionally that means is now the thing I want to watch at is not spatially Darren, look. Well, you can the point is you both can and can't multitask, and it depends on certain factors, right? So if you could never multitask, that would also be indicative that maybe cognitive functions were wrong. So I can, for example, walk and chew gum at the same time. I can throw a baseball while concurrently chatting with Steve, who's standing next to me, occasionally answering questions, blah, 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 blah. I mean, this physical thing and this talking thing at the same time. I can't receive information of talking on the same plane that I'm putting information of talking. I can't receive from two different directions and understand both concurrently if they're happening concurrently, because my attention requires me to focus on one field of activity here within the larger metaphysical field. So what that tells us is there's exclusivity, proportionality, and inverse proportionality in ways that people pay attention. So the fact that I make these kind of arguments consistently without making exactly the same arguments consistently is indicative that I am what we will call TI. Even if you just want to think of it as a shorthand, we need to draw these distinctions regardless. So in argumentation, you might think of these as various strategies of appeal. Some people make and or are responsive to appeals on various grounds. With my dad, when today we had this thing happen with the window, the final word on the matter was when he posited some nonsense explanation for it that made no valid sense at all because he didn't have any actual explanation for it. Then what happened after that? Well, I said, most likely it's going to be this or this or this. When I posited possible reasons why it might be like this, it doesn't matter anyway. It's the same price to fix it, whatever got broke. And so the point is, what that tells me is that he is not actually interested in, as an absolute value, the single explanation, the answer, the right answer. That to him, the right answer is instrumental, possibly, to preventing it from occurring again. But that since he's determined at this point that it's probably something that you can't prevent from occurring again, knowing why it happened at all is more or less irrelevant, and he boils it down to the instrumentality for him. Meanwhile, for me and Rachel, who both have FETI on the front stack, and I think words and statuses are important and stuff, we're going to frame things differently, you know? How can one absolutely value a function they're blind to? Well, it's basically because you can't value it any other way. You're so blind to it, you can't even use it instrumentally. If any attempt to do so will blow up in your face. Like my dad, valuing it NI absolutely. This is what it looks like, is the window thing. There's no explanation for this. So he comes up with a theory that it's been shot by a BB gun, and he validates it with the notion that he sees that there's a hole, a pit. What do you call it? A crater, a little crater. Okay. Now, I don't think there was a little crater actually, but that's what his claim was. So the point is, he thought of something. He thought, well, windows get broken by BB guns, and I've got an idea. Well, if it had been shot by a BB gun, there'd be a little pit, and looks like there's a little pit maybe up there, or a crater or something there, been shot by a BB gun. In that case, it's showing absolute value of real-time NI. So in that moment, it's satisfying for him to have a single explanation for this thing. But he doesn't really care about it across time at all. So as soon as we walk back outside and say, but Dad, that doesn't make any sense. How about this possible thing? Well, how about this? Now all of a sudden, it doesn't matter if it makes sense anymore. It doesn't matter why. It doesn't matter why it happened anymore, because it's no longer him experiencing that real-time moment of NI, and he can't even conceive of it being of value to resolve that question of that status, okay? Outside of that moment that he experienced the possibility of, in other words, he can say, here's an NI notion. It can be crazy, terrible, wrong. But then the next moment you say, here's an NI notion. You go, well, why would anybody give one of those? Completely oblivious to the fact that he just did that, That's absolute value polar. Darren, you and everybody else thinks I need to work on my background arrangement. So I'll tell you this. Whatever else you disagree with people around here, you can always find common ground by shitting on what a poor job I'm doing of arranging this place. Now, secretly, that's my meta strategy to bring the community closer together. And now you've made me reveal it to everybody. What am I going to do? Thank you for saying I'm charismatic. That's actually it's nice to hear that. I think about myself. My main problem is being basically a lack of charisma. So that's nice to hear. Let's see here. You want to go over this stuff now? It's like in this instance. So for me, if I had wanted to live stream right now in a way that perhaps you would have found more aesthetically pleasing, I could have done so by with comparatively little work to usual, which is to say, I just need to move this table over here, take some foodstuffs off of that table, bring the table over here, put this camera on this table, move this back so I'm closer to this, and move this closer so it's closer to the thing, get all green screen behind me, okay? And then, of course, I've got to deal with some lighting stuff. The lighting is tricky with the green screen because to get a green screen light lit properly is to light the screen, not the person. Normally, if you film somebody and you've got the lights involved, you want the lights to be right on the person that you're filming. But if you're filming with a green screen, you want the lights to actually be on the green screen. But you can't have yourself be completely unlit either. So it can be very tricky to get right. Now, the point is, if I'm going to put some energy into getting the green screen thing right, then I'm going to need to get it's one of those kind of calculations that I find difficult. So up to a point on any given occasion, up to a point, some amount of work to prep for the thing is worth it. For example, it's worth it for me to bother to just walk over here and plug in this mic instead of using the mic that's on the camera, because everybody's complaining about the mic on the camera. Getting the green screen involved, if it was just involved moving the furniture, then, which it usually does, so I usually don't care that much about the lighting, then okay, it's pretty reasonable thing for me to do, and I probably should do it. And saying that I should do it is probably a fair thing to say. If I have it set up like this right now, which I usually don't, usually it's more difficult to get this thing properly. The other thing is, it works. I probably should have this time set it up well, because Rachel's not out here. It's a lot more complicated to deal with when Rachel's here, because this cuts the room in half to get this thing set up properly, so she can't walk from here to here and here to here. Keeping in mind that it's a multi-purpose room and we live here and stuff. And we've tried multiple arrangements of the space, and this is about as good as we can get it as far as use of the space. It makes it a choice that I'm often likely to make maybe the wrong choice about, you might argue, when I sort of incline to live stream like right now. So, for example, the possible things that would have happened right now would have been not live stream at all, or live stream like this. I didn't feel like it. I didn't have the gumption in me to get all of that shit set up. And I wasn't planning on live streaming for a super long time. The reason I'm live streaming is because I feel like talking things out. I just feel like talking a bit before I go to bed. I've been watching Black Clover, this animation show, and I kind of got my fill of it, and I wasn't quite ready to go to bed, so I wanted to live stream for a little while. If I was being disciplined, then I would not be live streaming at all. No, I didn't live stream very much today. You mean like in general? Do I just live stream all day? Well, no, and that's the other thing is, I also have work, and I do my best. The answer is, to the extent that I can, yes, but I can't, so I have to work. The other good thing is, my job is such that I was already well set up to do my job remotely anyway before COVID. So, I mean, that doesn't mean it didn't fuck up the end of last year. It certainly did. I mean, I would have been going to states and nationals and stuff with my debater, but instead there wasn't any. So COVID still managed to affect me some, but I'm able to do a fair amount I'm able to get a decent amount of money from remote debate coaching, even though I don't do very much of it, because I'm like, I guess you'd say, highly qualified or whatever. And so then the other thing I do, of course, is I'll type people. I've got a typing session on Wednesday. People pay me $100 for that, or for life coaching sometimes too. Generally, people who want to pay me for a consultation of some sort, most of them want that consultation to be a typing session. But the reality is, although I say, I'm available to be hired for typing, I'm available for all manner of consultation. And I've had a variety of people of all walks of life hire me to engage in that kind of consultation. It's the sort of thing that if somebody asked me to be a life coach or something, wanted to hire me to be a life coach, I wouldn't take that job or I certainly wouldn't take that job until I understood clearly what it was they were looking for out of it. Because typically what I think of when I think of a life coach is somebody who takes the role of SITE manager from your ontology or something. Darren Kowalski, if it is in fact the case that you're either an ENFP or an ENTP, you should be able to figure that out very quickly and definitively. Okay, if you're one of those two, I can tell you in very definitive fact, for no certain terms, in very short order, which one it is. And I'll give you a link right now and we'll find out. Okay. I mean, you just have to do that thing and then you'll know right away. All right. So here's how you know if, in fact, they are right, Darren, and then you are one of those two. Then click that link and start answering a couple of those questions. If your immediate response is, "Oh, cool, I love these things," and you can do like 3 or 4 of them as fast as you can. Oh yeah, and then it turns out you're like, "Fuck yeah, boom! I did 10 of them right now. They're all right." And it turns out that actually 2 of them are wrong because you made a careless error. Then you're an ENTP. If you don't like to do it and you don't think you're naturally good at it, you're like, "Oh, I hate this kind of shit," or you take a long time to do 10 of them, and it's a big, you have to write everything down, take a lot of notes and not do it in your head and shit, and you go, "Oh," then you're an ENFP. It's just that simple. ENFPs have the skill that is that test in their blind spot. ENTPs have it as their tool function. There's something we must all know, that you're not really AAZZ. I think we all know that AAZZ. Nobody's last name is ZZ. And if there was somebody whose last name was ZZ, they wouldn't name their child AA. First of all, people would always mistake them for Alcoholics Anonymous. If your name were really AAZZ, how many calls would you feel from alcoholics looking for a meeting? You'd be answering those phone calls all day. And no, adding another A is not a good solution. Then you just get calls for the Automobile Association of America, and that's not much better. I absolutely agree with AAZZ's statement at 10:20 p.m. and statement at 10:21 p.m. I could agree with it, except it needs a prepositional phrase at yeah. Then I might agree with it. Yeah, all right. Come on into the room. I'm not going to restart the stream, so they're not going to be able to see you, but they'll be able to hear you, and they're not going to be able to see the document on the screen, but they could be able to access it. Let me get the link for everyone. The link to life, the link to love, the link to laughter, the link to loinks, the link to linkage. It's sausage time now. Patties aren't any good. Mozart was working on that when he died. What am I looking for? Something I got uploaded to this thing? That thing that homie sent me. Shared with me. The most robust. Oh my God. I love robustery. I find it robustery that it's so robustery out here today. Quit robustering my robusting. How can I open it with this one? Yes, Google Docs. That's right. Good old reliable Google Docs. Okay, let's see. Okay. Test is predicated on polar and first. I'll read this thing out loud so I'm not a boring schmoring. Oh, I forgot I was supposed to share it. Huh? Here we go. Oh, cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Oh, cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Oh, cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. Here you go. This is so that you can oh, cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha as well if you'd like to. And now we'll read it out loud in a really compelling, dramatic voice, okay? How to test polar. Note the quantitative basis by which we decide polar is not based on whether someone is not competent in comparison to the human population relative to a particular function, but rather every other function. So even if someone is better producing anti-correlative, oh, that's begging the question. It is, in fact, making the claim. I am, in fact, making the claim that the polar will play out both against the general population, and that the thing is, it's true that among quantitative things, what doesn't matter? This is all theoretical stuff here that I don't need to get into. It's not. Listen, let me just say right off the bat, this is incredibly already vastly better than the thing I read by Matt Acut. This is even when you are successfully not saying anything, it's not because you're trying to not say anything like that asswipe. Unidimensional apparatus focused on testing competency within one function. Given the definition of the polar function, stands to reason one who is in a polar function should not do well in any of the correlates heavily associated with that particular function. Correct. So it is through that we can rationally assert they are indeed polar. Right. But in my opinion, it should validate against the general population as well. Obviously, it may be the case you find an individual who's polar or something is tests higher potentially than, say, the, I don't know, 6th or 8th or 4th maybe of somebody else. Maybe. But if you can really quantify them as skills, if the correlation in the skill and the attentional manner is strong enough, then there shouldn't be a 4th slot SI that's worse than 7th slot SI in anywhere in the population, really. If it's that bad, then it should be SI, it should be polar. But anyway, regardless, not really relevant as to whether these things are effective in terms of how they do the math. So let's see here. How to know. Here's the thing here. How to know Fe polar. The subject cannot match the vibrational frequency of the appropriate vibration up to a certain percentage. What does that mean? The subject cannot match the movement patterns of the appropriate movement? I mean, I don't think that's going to tell you. I don't know what the first one means. I'm sure this. I think the second one means it's like mirror miming. Like if I raise my arm, you raise your arm, or what? I'm not sure what that is. Are you not in here yet? Oh, you're not in here yet. Well, why aren't you in here? Isn't he supposed to come in here? It's not locked. Why don't you just come on in? They cannot divide the plan with order. They cannot explain why they ordered in that specific way or both. That's pretty good, pretty okay, but I'm not sure. You have to be a little bit more maybe clear about what comprises the kind of thing that requires ordinality, because it's like when I tell kids when they're doing expository speeches, you need to break this into 8 steps, but you need to remember that the 8-step breakup is contingent on whether the thing is fundamentally an ordinal task or not. Taking a shower involves ordinality. It's important you take off your clothes before you get under the water, not after, right? But how to be cool, well, that doesn't require ordinality. And that time frame should be able to establish pretty quickly. So, testing knowing based on causations. Set up a story by which there are both correlational patterns and causal patterns, and at some point within the story, you must ask the person what will happen next based on the story alone. How do they know? Pin 2 equally valid interpretations, one being causation, the other being correlation. This idea I really like a lot. I really do. It's just a matter of coming up with that story, I guess. That's the tricky part, right? But I really like that idea of having a story in which there are two easy or automatic interpretations of what happened as a general way of testing between values and see which one they default to. Or if they default to recognizing that there are two and trying to figure out what you're doing. Yeah, I've played Among Us before. We've played, but to be honest, I don't find it. I'm in the autonomy room. I'm not in the air room. Sorry, that was earlier. That was before, dude. God, you shouldn't just assume that I'm going to the same place I said I was going to go to before, because it's a new time now. You find yourself in the midst of God. I think it helps people stifle their inhumane qualities to become better people for the most part. But if you look into the metaphorical and symbolic messages that the Bible conveys, you find yourself in the midst of God, or so one can say. And finally, K-pop is hella based. Now, one of those sentences is not like the others. So I really like the idea here, Mr. Man, about the story that, I don't know what it, like.
Wait, which one are you on?
Actually, okay, but look, here's the thing. I actually kind of misread this when I first read it, because even they said correlational and causal, I read conditional and causal because, of course, the contrasting thing here that you're looking for is conditionality versus causality. Correlation is a way of choosing causality that approximates the metrics that conditionality uses. So in other words, when people say correlation is not causation, what they say is, remember that causality requires a specific kind of relationship that is beyond just frequency of co-occurrence. And the alternative to causality, though, is conditionality. It's not like.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I rushed through this like I did this in an hour. So
No. Hey, look. I just want to say, I can tell right away that this is going to be full of some questionable and sort of substantiated claims and notions and stuff. But I can also tell instantly this is way, way better and worth looking through compared to, say, Matt Cut's thing, which I could instantly tell was made out of bullshit, threaded, sewn together with bullshit, and then binded in a book binding of bullshit. Anyway, so let me continue forward. Pins you equally by SI time frame should be able to establish pretty quickly. Test knowing based on correlation. Set up a story by which there are correlation patterns. And at some point in the story, okay, so for this sort of idea, though, regardless of whether you meant correlation, conditionality, or whatever, for this idea to be really, it needs to be test concepted, you need to make such a story and see how it plays out. Some of these ideas are very intuitively interesting, but we'll have to see how they play out. And I don't know if I can make such a story or not. I'll probably end up thinking about it later, and maybe I will.
Yeah, I made a test example too, so we can go over that as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have the link for that? I think I sent that too.
I mean, I'm just looking at this right now. I don't know. Okay, so TI looks general. It looks like a generally good kind of summary of things. FI high level instrumentation required. Hard test to employ rigorously without our strong. She's not even trying to test it. Yeah. That's how I feel about it. I feel like it confuses me for trying to test it.
I mean, I was thinking about it. It's kind of hard to test on a lot of levels because one it assumes like a lot of honesty out of the person, which isn't even the hardest part. But the other part is, again, like I said, it can be like taxing to if it's like a high FI user, the questions may be like they may feel like wronged by it, or something like there's certain ethical implications with it. So yeah, I'm still trying to figure the FI thing out, but yeah.
It's interesting here you say FI polar people can't use emotions to establish moral ideals or recognize when their emotions, I guess, are in contradiction, or when their ideals are in contradiction with what their emotions are. I think we can recognize it. I think it's when our emotions do actually impact a decision, instead of like not getting the fact that my thinking would tell me something other than my emotions, I'm much more likely to slow way down, like be confused rather than to confuse, rather than to mistake my emotions and thoughts as being in line with each other, not to make that mistake, but I'm more likely to make the mistake that I'm just confused because I can't think right now. That's how I know when I'm in my feelings. When my feelings been hurt, I have nothing to say because I can't think right now. I don't even know how to. I'm still trying to figure out how to start thinking. How to test first. Note the quantitative basis by which we decide first is not based on whether someone is frequently outputting correlates relative to the human population, but rather themselves. So, right, that's very true and important. You do understand things well. So even if someone is not outputting NI correlates highly compared to the human population.
Because there's like this situation where like people say, oh, this guy is not good at NI, but it's not really about that. It's more so about what is their polar, because polar isn't about whether or not they're doing it well. It's about whether they're doing it at all. And then at the same time, you have to look at like how much are they using it. If they keep using NI, given the
I will say this though, because everybody has the same number of hours per day, it therefore does follow that it will correlate just as well in ratio of time across the population as it will within an individual. So it'll be the case that all NI-DOMs spend more of their time receiving an NI level than any non-NI-DOMs, as well as that they'll spend an equivalently large amount of their own time compared to the other functions in NI. And the thing about that is also, it's important to remember that we relate to these functions in several ways. So I can see an example of someone else's extroverted intuition like this, I'm going to relate to it in a certain way. And if I'm doing some extroverted intuition myself, writing something on a paper or something like this, I'll engage it in a certain way. And if I'm, what's the third one? So I can also, I guess, seek ideas. So that's the other one that I'm very unlikely to do. So much so that I had trouble thinking what it was. Like, I seek to know what your position is. That's my TI question asking thing. But if I had a seeking relationship with extroverted intuition, I could go around and ask other people for ideas because I can't think of anything. So it's like with TI, on the other hand, when I ask questions, it's because I want to pin the other person down on their position or know what their position is. And when I see it in the world, I'm not interested necessarily in doing a bunch of TI parsing of shit. And when I'm doing the thinking myself, when I'm parsing shit out myself, I'm as likely to be doing it outside of myself as I am inside of myself. So it's like, the thing is, we engage with the thing in different ways, and that's what makes it tricky to talk about the time as well. For example, when I'm watching football, am I engaged in extroverted sensing? No. I'm engaged in introverted intuition in some regard, receiving information about extroverted sensing.
Right.
But nevertheless, extroverted sensing is in that story somewhere. And yet there isn't any agent in the room who's using extroverted sensing as a way of paying attention. It nevertheless is the case that how we value and understand that thing that's on the TV, they call the football game, links to the issue of our relationship to extroverted sensing, despite the fact that nobody's using that cognitive function in that moment. It's a relevant factor in understanding how one cognates, I guess. I don't know why. I don't know where that's all going back. So let me continue reading out loud.
With that, would it like bring in like an aspect of like location as well?
Well, I mean, the thing is, with a football game, my take on it is, you have an example of something that is normally an SESI thing, that you're in some physical spot, that you are watching something actually happening in front of you, and that it's mostly SI in the sense that your experience there is one that involves a hard stadium seat. Maybe it's cold. Maybe you've got to get some food. You're getting up and down. Your voice is getting hoarse. But it also involves some more concrete SE, because not only are you watching the game in front of you, but you're participating in sort of a group activity called being a fan in a crowd that involves standing up and sitting down and all this other kind of stuff. So it's like, normally it's a very S environment. When you put it on TV, it still appeals to the desire to receive SE objects. So in other words, the desire to NI on the physical plane, about stuff that's happening on the physical plane. But it allows it to be moved to a place where NI is actually more comfortable operating, namely the metaphysical plane. And we know it's in the metaphysical plane because, I can mute it, for example. So I don't have to hear the sounds of the game. I can not pay attention to it easily and shift my attention over to something else. Things in the physical realm have a tendency to require you to move away from the thing to stop paying attention to it if it's making a lot of noise or lights or whatever, you know?
Right.
So, so test for each function. NI, high expression of NI correlates either first or second in frequency with a judging function. Is that what JE means?
Yeah.
Okay.
Extroverted judging function.
Extroverted judging function. And SI and NE. Okay, but so that's not you didn't.
That's all just like fluff stuff. I mean, for this one, it's just talking about like I basically assert like to test first is based off of like usage. So to test usage, it's best to use like instead of a unidimensional test where you're testing like competency like within one function or whatever, you set something up where you're able to simulate all the functions, and then you can see how much which function a person keeps using over and over again. And then so the logic is, so we just employed the unidimensional test. We just got their polar. So now we know their second function. So now when we're measured, for the multidimensional test, we know that the two highest usage functions are going to be their first and their second. Now, if we didn't have the unidimensional test, then we wouldn't be able to demarcate, because we may have a situation where their first can be the second most used, or it could be the first most used, and in terms of the second slot, vice versa. So now that we know the second, we know that whichever other highest usage is the first function. And so then we can know their type. Okay, so you're saying that's why the number one priority is to identify the polar. Yeah. I mean, when we have the polar, we know the second. So then it gets rid of the issue of, okay, well, this person is showing high NI, and their TE is second highest, but through that we can't then deduce, oh, well, they're an INTJ. Well, they could be an ENTJ. So. Right. Well, I mean, the thing is, yeah, it's obviously nice when you can nail the polar down, and that helps. I'm looking for something specific here. Yeah. No, not that. Is this? Yeah? No, probably not. Where's that thing about? Yeah. Let's see here. Okay. Still looking for this thing, but it's got to be here right now. Is it this one? Yeah. Have you seen the typology quick reference guide? I don't know exactly what you're referencing. I remember when I was making this, I saw I went to just some video, and within the video, it had I just saw. I paused on a part that had a basic breakdown of basically the types in terms of external versus internal versus physical versus metaphysical. So I mean that's pretty much all I saw. Okay, well, so this kind of helps. Will kind of help structure things a bit, because when you're saying about these correlates and stuff, we're really talking about not two kinds of analysis, true, but there are more than just one kind of correlate. So, this is a useful
a useful document in terms of summing stuff up, like this. Because you're talking about processes, values, or correlates. I tend to distinguish between values and correlates, even though values are kind of correlate. The thing is, like, this is an example of what I would say is a good approach to potentially trying to do this. I don't want to do the whole thing for sure, but this is sort of an outline of approaches, as it says here. So what are the correlate assessments? Values: familiarity, predictability, resource management. What are the contrary values? Improvisation, universality. What are the fundamentals of SI? Sleeping, eating, drinking, hygiene. What are self-soothings for SI users? Home, repetition, TV, bed. Now, like, to what extent are you going to be able to establish that universality is a contrary value? Well, that's where you want to have like a specific question, but have the whole thing organized like this, right? So you go, all right, so the question for universality is you try to put them in a situation or a hypothetical where their particular runs afoul of something that's generally known. You assume you set it up so you're picking something that you can assume that they already do know because it's so generally known, but not something that is so absolute consensus about, or something that has enough sort of personal opinion about that they can believably choose to reject the universal in favor of their particularists in this story. It's going to be tricky to find something that does that without triggering potentially other things. Like, well, I don't want to say that because I know most people think this and it's going to make me look bad, right? That they might still be opposing universality, but give you a universal answer because of particular social preference reasons or something. So that's where it gets tricky, right? Is like trying to figure out how to ask a question that compels them to demonstrate the distinction that in fact they prefer their own particularist knowledge, even when it runs afoul of the universal understanding of things, without alerting them to the fact that you're trying to do that, and without doing it in such a way that even people who prefer particularism are still going to choose the universal thing because of other reasons. You know?
I think this was something that I had ran into when I was looking into the NISI test.
So yeah, I mean, the thing is, it gives you sort of an idea of of what specifically you'd like. This is pretty straightforward. If you see somebody who's wiggly a lot in their chair, they're probably not an SI dom. But some things you'd need it to be more precised out. Like, well, how do you test to see if contrary values, if improvisation and contrary value? You need to have several distinct possible specific scripts. Like, say this. My hypothesis is if they respond like meow, then they're meow. And if they respond like meow, then they're meow. And when you go about trying to make that thing, you'll discover that what you're asking yourself to do is to pick a single thing in quotes that tells you something very precise, that is so carefully crafted that it avoids a lot of possible pitfalls, because you may only get a chance to ask one or two of that kind of questions. Because if you think about it, if you make this for all the types, there's no way to ask all those questions in one typing session. So that's where the rubber really meets the road. That's the work that needs to be done in part, is have somebody who understands, like, okay, so I like this outline, but I like to outline it like meow or whatever, fine. But it needs to be organized properly, and then there needs to be an understanding, like, okay, well, this is what's needed is 1A, and then it's the actual words that one says to the person. Then you can start to standardize this thing, right? because you have to give people at least a script, an exact script, and say, these are the possible ways that a person can respond. The reason I don't really like to bother even trying this is because I know from my experience that I can't successfully test people without having the ability to follow up based on my instincts in the moment to something they say. So I'm not absolutely convinced right now, anyway, that there's enough leverage from the skills test to create an accurate test that doesn't involve some art and can get away with typing somebody with just sort of science, quote unquote, or understanding the functions and proper question making and all that kind of stuff. If it is possible, it's going to take a great deal of sort of brute force effort, trial and error of different kinds of questions. It's, in other words, what we understand is not going to be adequate to reveal to us the effectiveness of any given kind of question here. So we're going to have to try them out and see. We'll find out which ones are more gameable than others through the process, but it's like, that's the thing. The fun work's been done.
Right.
And the rest of the work's boring.
Yeah. Definitely sounds like it.
So, you know, that's my overarching response to what you're saying here is, you make some very good points about, in general, what has to be accomplished before we can meaningfully lock down testing results. I do enjoy the idea of trying to come up with a story in which somebody is led by conditional reasoning to one conclusion and by empirical data to another. And but that's gonna be hard to come up with, but I'm interested to try. So I would just say that whenever one's trying to standardize a test like this, the key thing is cleanliness and then your distinctions. So, you know, organize things, values, contrary values, and be clear in your distinctions about what those things are and why they're distinct from other kind of correlates like behaviorals. And see if you can, and which are basically self-reporting unless you're observing them. Like if I'm watching a person's physical behavior on the screen and they're wiggling around in their chair a lot, that's not self-reporting. That's me observing. That's observational data. But if I'm asking them, well, how often do you drink water? Or that's self-reporting. That's different than a values test that presumes to be able to have them demonstrate values that they can't avoid demonstrating to some extent because they hold them precious or are implicitly part of who they are because of their cognitive function stack. So, like in each of those kinds of questions, is a different level of strength. It is reasonable to conclude that you could build an incredibly powerful circumstantial case for a given type without any direct evidence. But yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
Anyway. You want to check out the test example?
Sure. Where is it?
I think I sent it as well. It should be called most robust typology test example.
Okay, let me see.
I think I sent the same document twice.
Let me see here.
I think I sent the same document twice.
It says framework, not example.
Yeah, I think I sent the same document twice. I'll just send it again.
Okay.
Ready?
Oh, why does my little phone buzz? Oh, why must it buzz? With its
I think that's the text. I'm stupid. I should have just sent it in the chat.
Can you send it by text?
Yeah, I sent it to you by text.
I will get it to myself.
It's weird. I can't use it.
That's fine. I'll get it. Let's see here.
Can't use it.
I'm gonna open your ass in Google Docs.
Okay, I just sent it in the chat text thing, whatever.
Okay. I see. Views together in room. Well, we're having a together experience. Isn't that nice? So fun. I love togetherness. All right, let's see here. What were you looking at? Let me see. With my eyes so wide, so bright and true, I'll tell you if your test is poo. Let's find out. Scene. You're chilling with your friends Luke, Samantha, Chris, and Tiana. That day you met a year ago at the bar. Everyone was talking and Luke decided to talk about how your favorite pro basketball team will lose the next game. You responded lightly at first, but as Luke kept asserting that your team would lose, you got angry, punched him, and then you guys start fighting. Samantha, Chris, and Tanya all jump in to stop the fight, and with Luke and are now having a bruised face, bruised nose, bruised arm, everyone's questioning your character and whether they should call the police or send him to the hospital.
So this would be like a FE test, something like that.
Just divide the script as to how you will be seen as a nonviolent person in their eyes. That's great. I like that question.
So at first, because I mean, in terms of the script, because there's also conditionals like it's right here. Like if Luke goes to the hospital, this will happen. If he goes here, this will happen. So at first it's like a TETI thing, but then the FE element goes in because like the people like respond, like they won't take your like TI. Like you can go to your where it says like Samantha, the tester script is like, she's like, why would you do this? He could be seriously hurt. He could be dead. I'm really scared for Luke right now. So you just form like the first like TETI whatever thing, and then you respond, and then you think that's gonna work, but then she gives another response like I don't believe you and stuff like that, and now you have to basically do FE, right? Because you can't just say like the same TE stuff again. Like, look, logically everything's gonna be okay. You have to be whatever. So my guess is that someone who's like FE polar would basically just not really like they probably just wouldn't be able to respond after that. I actually took this and I couldn't respond. Like I simulated it, and after she said like I don't believe you, blah blah blah, I didn't know what else to say except just saying, well, he's just gonna be okay. So I don't know what else to say. So
well, see, my approach to it I would say I would fall on my sword because I figured it would be indefensible because I threw the first punch. So I would have to just say, I would go overboard saying, yes, how what I did was indefensible and to call the police because I need to be arrested for this and blah, 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 blah. And unless you guys want to help me figure out why I did this totally uncharacteristic thing, because I have no idea either. It's insane. I never do anything like this. And I normally would always advocate if you can't control yourself enough and you just go off and punch somebody in the face.
The thing is within the objective, it says that you have to try to be seen as a non-violent person. So it's like you have to try.
That is my strategy here. Because a non-violent person isn't going to try to defend their violence very much. The fact that I was violent, I have to paint it as totally uncharacteristic and as shocking to me as anybody else. So, and that I have to be appalled by it. So my first thing is to put on a big display of hating myself for having done it. Then a big display of being totally confused because it's so uncharacteristic, and I'm not sure how that possibly happened. What could trigger me to act in such an unusual way? Ask them to try to help me understand, maybe, and hopefully get their sympathy at some point, so that they're not in such a rush to get me arrested. Because I don't really actually want to get arrested, even though I punched them in the face.
Oh, so you're like using like reverse psychology?
No, not really. I'm saying I'm saying a person who actually is a nonviolent person, who for some reason in a fit of pique acted violently, is not going to go easy on themselves afterwards. I actually am a nonviolent person. So in this case, all the appropriate emotional displays are consistent with reality. So I'll go with those. The only thing I'm going to be somewhat disingenuous about maybe is, I might make a bunch of noise about how, yeah, I should go to jail by any fairness, blah, 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 but I'm not actually going to want to go to jail.
Right, yeah, that's what I was referencing.
And I'm going to be okay with getting out of it, even though I'm going to be making all these claims about how important it is in general that we do this. It's just to set up for, why is this the exception to that? But I like that question a lot. It's interesting. It's interesting to hear you even talk about the question. It does suggest you might be FP4. Let me see this next one. You are a bank robber who needs to take care of his family. There's a bank that you have had your eye on for a while now. Let me answer these questions, actually. Your task is to rob this bank and not get caught. You will receive $10 million enough to take care of your family and no longer a robber. Bank's open 24 hours a day, but the guards are not on duty guards are only on duty for 12 hours a day. The bank has one camera above the counter's desk. There are metal blocks for every door. The money is in a door behind the teller's counter. Tools you have: getaway car and driver, metal cutter, spray paint, mask, gloves, and boots, car lock opener. I must devise a step-by-step plan to successfully rob into the bank. So before I look at what it says to the tester, is that the information I start with, and I start to answer now before you give me any more information?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see here. Okay, so I've got a spray paint. I've got a mask, glove, and boots, and a metal cutter. Metal locks for every door, meaning like padlocks?
I wasn't really that specific. Just metal locks on all of the doors.
Okay, so but I mean, are they deadbolts? Are they door knob locks, or something else? Because if you want me to make a step-by-step plan, then you're gonna have to be specific enough to tell me what kind of locks there.
Yeah, I guess it would be on the doorknobs, I guess.
Okay. I have a metal cutter, meaning is it a cordless power tool or is it a hand tool?
Hand tool.
Okay. I'm going to rob this bank, right? Okay. And there are metal locks for every door. How many doors are there? Okay, so there's a door, and then the money's in the door behind the teller's counter. And a tool to have room, yeah. Okay. So then what I'm going to do, I'm going to I mean, I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to run in with my mask, gloves, and boots, okay, with the spray paint. And let's say I'm assuming there's no guards. I'm coming in at 10:20 p.m. There's not a guard, and probably nobody's going to check in the immediate interim after the guard just left. I'm going to run in, and I'm going to shoot the spray paint into the lady's face, the teller's face, so that she can't see what she's doing, the counter or whatever she is. There's no teller?
No, because the bank is oh no, there is. I'm sorry.
There's a teller. So I'm gonna squirt the teller's face with the spray paint. And the reason for this is because if it gets in her eyes, she's not only not gonna be able to see me and what I'm doing, But she's also not going to be able to like push alarm buttons or whatever else. So once I've got her spray painting, she's rolling around for then I can use the metal cutter to get behind the counter, assuming they have some sort of like glass thing you have to get past or other kind of security thing. I'll use either the car lock opener, which might be like one of those things that busts out the lock.
Wait. So well, you missed one step with the camera, but I actually have to add another thing. I mean, I don't rush this; it doesn't matter. So anyway, something just happened within the situation. Something changed. So you just robbed it. You cut everything open. You got the money, and the alarm sounded off and everything. So once your getaway driver heard that, he left, and so he's gone now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now that the alarms are off, the police are coming, but there is a car. So there was a car right behind your getaway driver's car with a push start button, and so now you have to figure out how to escape with this new information.
Okay. Well, but see, I didn't get to finish my robbery because I was gonna spray paint the camera and then dress the teller up in the mask.
Oh, I thought you already got to the part where you could.
No, I was still determining how much work I had to do to get behind the teller's window. Anyway, assuming I can get behind the teller's window, get in the thing, steal the money, then now she's got her face spray painted, but I'm going to spray paint the camera now so I can take off the mask. I'm going to take off the mask and I put it on her. And presumably she doesn't really want to help me with this, but I'm also going to put my gloves and my boots on her, and I'm going to use if the car lock opener is like the kind that is round that you push in to punch out the car lock because you're just going to replace the whole thing, rather than the kind of the Slim Jim kind. I'm going to pretend that's a gun and stick it on her back. I'm going to have her walk outside with the mask and stuff on. Of course, she still has paint on her face. So to make sure she can't really talk very well, I guess I'll squirt her mouth full of paint too.
That is wow.
And then I'll make her go outside, and I will put on her shoes. Hopefully she's wearing sensible shoes. And if she has gloves, I'll put on her gloves. If she doesn't have gloves, let's say she has a shawl, I'll put that on. So I look like I'm wearing different clothes than the person who ran in there, and also so that she looks like a robber. And then I'll get some tape, because obviously it's a bank. Back in the back, they've got Scotch tape, and I will tape to her the metal cutter and the spray paint can once I'm done. So she not only has the mask and the gloves and the boots, but she has the other tools too with her. And I push her out in front of me with the presumed gun, and I say, "Now you keep walking, and don't turn around. If I see you turn around, I'm blowing you away." And then she walks slowly down the street. I very quietly turn around, very tiptoe run out the other direction, like fast walk, And I say, you don't even bother with the getaway driver. He's like, "Go away, shh, I've got this, it's fine." And he's like, "But why half of the money?" I'm like, "Fuck your half of the money. I'm doing this myself." And then I just walk down the street with the money. And then when the cops come, before they even see me, I'm already trying to flag them out. "She's right there. Right there. There's the guy right there." And then I get them. Obviously, the guy who's yelling at them like that, he's not the bank robber, obviously. So they go after that person. By the time they figure the whole thing out, I'm away scot-free with my money and my conscience intact, knowing that I respected that cashier's rights so much by not killing her.
That is so. Let me ask. So, do you think like your significant other or whatever could formulate a plan for this since she's an INFJ?
I mean, sure, they'll come up with a plan. The thing that you'll discover with INFJs.
Well, I have a personal plan, like actually.
No, but the thing is, it's the matter of number of steps. So the thing I've noted is when you ask somebody to break something into exactly 8 steps, if they're an INFJ or an ISFJ, there's a decent chance they'll get partway through the thing before they realize that they haven't been paying attention to how many numbers of steps it has. So, can you break it into exactly 8 steps? What, make a bowl of cereal? Well, sure. I mean, you go to the kitchen, you get your bowl, you get your cereal, you go to the fridge, you open the fridge. Wait, how many steps is that? That's TE polar. It still does the things, It's not somebody's TE polar still knows how to make a bowl of cereal. Lula broke her right arm badly. The doctors asked her to give them an account of her experience 3 days up to that point. Lula tells them on the first day she fell off her bed and used her right arm to brace her fall, but she said it felt funny. After that, she got cereal and her dog pushed her chair down, making her slip out of her chair, and she used her right arm to brace her fall. And again, she said it felt funny. Then she went to school and the bully pushed her to the ground, and again, she thought it felt funny. After school, she went to the softball game, and when she went to catch the ball before it hit the ground, she fell and said her arm felt funny. After that, Lulu went home, ate dinner, and went to sleep. On the second day, Lulu fell off her bed and used her right to brace her fall, but she said her right arm felt funny. After that, she made pancakes, and while eating them, her dog pushed her chair and she fell on her right arm, which she claims felt funny. She went to school, and a group of bullies pushed her to the ground, and she used her right arm to brace herself. She said her right arm felt funny. After school, she went to football practice and got hit hard on her right side. After this, she went home, ate dinner, and went to bed. On the third day, Lulu woke up, went to breakfast, and made herself some eggs. And then after that, she claimed she lost her memory. You are tasked with giving a causal and a correlation, or I don't know what that is exactly, for why we know how Lulu broke her arm. So what do you mean by a correlational basis in this instance? Like,
I mean, the way that I basically so with the correlation, I mean that's in relation to like the SI.
Oh, which of those things is most likely to correlate? I get you. So yeah. In other words, in this instance, in the general story, it's most likely that she had at least fractured her arm on the first fall. But, and that the reason it felt funny every time thereafter is because it had already been fractured. However, if you're looking at a general correlation thing, as you're saying, like which of the things that occurred to her is most likely to cause a broken bone, well, that would be the football hit, So is that what you're trying to get at there?
So I guess with this, the other point that I was trying to get with in terms of the causal was that's right, like the football hit and stuff like that. Okay. And then the SI point, like with the correlation, because it says where it says like she lost, like she goes up, she went to make breakfast, makes her eggs, and then claims she lost her memory. And then I'm thinking, okay, someone who's SI, they're like keeping note of like all of the, like particular instances that keep occurring like over and over and over again. And then what keeps happening over and over specifically is like her dog, I think, pushed her off the thing. And so they're going to just assert, oh, well, I mean, even though like she lost her memory and stuff, we remember that her dog pushed her out of the chair. So we know that in this case, when she was in the kitchen and stuff, the reason why she is like that like what finally like broke everything is that on top of all of these occurrences that keep happening over and over and over again, the final straw was that her dog came and pushed her off the chair and it fell on her right side and now her arm's broken. So. Okay,
so why do you think someone would conclude that one in particular or some other particular one?
I mean,
the thing is, it's an interesting question. I would change the last thing you are tasked with, and to simply what are some possible reasons why you might argue that a given explanation for how she broke her arm. You give some possible explanations for how she broke her arm, and what are some reasons why you argue to prefer those explanations over others? Because my first best answer would be she broke it the very first time, because it felt funny when she broke it the first time. This felt, and there's no indication that it felt funny prior to her falling on the first day. And there's no indication, and it's implied that it doesn't feel funny when she doesn't fall on it. So I would suggest that it was either already fractured, but assuming she was fine before 3 days ago, that she fractured it on the very first fall, because otherwise it wouldn't feel the same way thereafter. That was my first reasoning. My second reasoning was, well, okay, if we were to go with correlation, football hits are most likely the cause of all these things, a broken arm probably. The third thing I'm thinking though now is of all the things that are actually likely to cause a broken bone, or to correlate most strongly with a broken bone, and an event that causes you to lose your memory is probably more likely to correlate with broken bones than any of these other things. And of course, since we don't know what that was because she doesn't remember it, then most likely, if she broke her arm, she did so after she lost her memory, or in the event that not after, but in the event that caused her to lose her memory and lost her memory of the breaking of the arm as a consequence. And the other stuff is just a red herring. I think it's a good test because it tests your intuitive, I guess, vigor. But I have no idea. The thing is, I probably will use, I suspect I'm going to use quite a bit of this stuff from this. Now that I've seen it, I like this kind of stuff. I've written these, not like this exactly, but I've written story questions before, but it's really nice actually to see these, and I just don't ever get to be the person who's asking questions. I mean, I don't ever get to be the person who's answering questions. I always have to be the person who's asking them. So it's interesting to read these and not know ahead of time what the purpose of it is, and just sort of try to answer it. Let's see. Jesse says, I'm not going to try to not read the explanation stuff. It's just a question. So, okay. State what it means if Jesse is lying or telling the truth. Jesse said if he retires from basketball, he will declare a coup on all aliens over the galaxy. Jesse says he retired from basketball, so what will Jesse do? Well, we don't know what he will do. We know what he said he will do. He said he will declare a coup. Jesse now tells us he and his girlfriend are having problems. Jesse said if the problems stop, he will marry her. Jesse said if the problems did not stop, so what will Jesse do?
Oh, it says something like the implication of if he's lying or if he's telling the truth.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And if he's
all right. So and the first one, then, if Jesse is lying, then well, I mean, then he will not declare a coup. But if in the second one, in the first one, if he's telling the truth, then either he's lying about retiring from basketball, in which case he's telling the truth about his conditional statement because the antecedent is false, or he's lying about both his willingness to ever retire from basketball and therefore his willingness to ever declare a coup. So both statements are false, in which case the conditional statement is true. Or if he's telling the truth, then he has retired and he is in fact declaring a coup. Now let's go on to the next one. Jesse now tells us he and his girlfriend are having problems. He said if the problem stopped, he'll marry her. They did not stop. So what will Jesse do? Well, if he's telling the truth, then he will either marry her or not marry her. Either one. If he's lying, then if he's lying about the problems not stopping, in fact, the problems have stopped, but was telling the truth about the conditional, then he will marry her. But if he's lying about the conditional, which is to say, if he's telling the truth about the problems, well, he can't be lying about. If he's lying about the conditional, then he must be telling the truth about the problems not stopping. And if he's telling the truth about the problems not stopping, he must be lying about the conditional. Jesse's now homeless and he needs some money. He said if a person gives him $1, he will make it $10. Jesse says a person gives him 99 cents and a quarter. So what will Jesse do? Well, if he is telling the truth, then he's not required to do anything because nobody gave him $1. He just was given 99 cents and given a quarter. So even if he's telling the truth, he's still not required to do anything with it. If he's lying, and then he was never going to do anything with it in the first place, and the only way that if he would be lying would be he'd have to have been given $1 and then not made it into $10. But since he wasn't given $1, it's not possible for him to be lying about the first one. So, and that's the only thing he says there. So yeah, it's not possible for him to be lying in this instance. Just like if I say, if you give me $100,000 right now, I will jump up and down. It's not possible for me to be lying until you give me $100,000. Jesse has court for harassing a man on the street for $1. Jesse says that the judge tells him he's guilty, will pee on the table. Jesse says the judge says he is not guilty. What will Jesse do? If he's telling the truth, then he either will or will not pee on the table, either one. If he's lying, then he can't be lying in this instance unless he can only be lying about one of the two again. Either he's lying about the judge says he's not guilty, or he's lying about if the judge tells him he is guilty, he will pee on the table. Or because he can't. No, not in this case. If he's telling the truth, the judge says he's not guilty, then he has to be telling the truth about the conditional statement because the first part of the conditional, the antecedent to the conditional, is false. Anytime the antecedent to a conditional is false, the conditional whole is always true. So he must be, I guess, lying about the second one, in which case, if he's telling the truth about the first one, then he did pee on the table. Yeah. So, in fact, based on that question, it's an interesting question.
So, so with the TI questions, I mean, they're not really. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the ones that you have, I mean, it's all really the same thing. But the one thing that I wanted to emphasize is pretty much to basically blur the lines between like objects and like people, like their statuses and stuff like that. Because I don't know, like I kind of see like sometimes like ENFPs or ESFPs, like not even like they're not even trying to like purposefully game it, but maybe just because of experience, they're able to recognize like I don't know, just like how logic sounds, and then just based off of whatever workarounds, they're able to, give you the right answer when it's with things that are deemed as like, purely logical matters. But I noticed that what gets rid of this problem is pretty much when you involve like people and like statuses and all this different types of stuff is where they start to have like problems because they associate people with not being logical and stuff like that. So that's pretty much the main emphasis of that's the emphasis that I'm basically trying to insert on just the TI questions, but it's not really structurally, I guess, different from your like version of the TI test.
Well, I really like this question here. I think it's phrased just like this. Okay, Jesse says 2 sentences. One sentence is true. Exactly one of the sentences is true, and exactly one of the sentences is false. Exactly one of the sentences is true, and exactly one of the sentences is false. One of the sentences is false. What happened? And then I'll put the sentences, okay? So here's the 2 sentences. If the judge finds me guilty, I'll pee on his face. And sentence 2, the judge acquitted me. Did not find me guilty, just to be careful, just to be logically careful. There's the 2 sentences. A very interesting question, because if the judge finds me guilty, I'll pee on his face. Hey, the judge did not find me guilty. One of those sentences has to be false. If the first sentence is false, then it must be the case that the judge found him guilty and he nevertheless did not pee on the judge's face. So if that is in fact the one that's false, then the judge did not find me guilty is necessarily also false. Since you can't have them both be false, one of them has to be true, then it must be the judge did not find me guilty is false, because then that allows the first one to be true, because then the first part can be true and the second part can be true. And the sentence is rendered true even if the first part of it is false. But if the first part of it is false, and that sentence is true, then the second part would have to also be false. And then that would make the sentence as a whole true. So yeah, if in fact you set those conditions that one of these 2 sentences is false and one of these 2 sentences is true, then if you give people that amount of information and these 2 sentences, if the judge finds me guilty, I'll pee on his face, and the sentence, the judge did not find me guilty, we can logically deduce that he did pee on his face. Isn't that interesting? I like that. I like that a lot. That's very neat, because it's like it takes an interesting advantage of the fact that conditional statements are only falsified in one of the 4 permutations of the 2 statements within the conditional sentence. So because it's only false when the first statement in the conditional is true, you're able to do neat stuff like this. There's another kind of thing that's like that in logic, which is it stems from the fact that if let's say you were to put so let's say they're conditional, if A then B, and you want to convert it, then you can convert it logically to not A or B. Because if in fact, if A then B, then you're necessarily either going to have not A or you're going to have B. Because if you have A, then you have B, right? So the thing about that is, it means that if you say something like, if it rains tomorrow, aliens will invade, that means either it doesn't rain tomorrow or aliens will invade. And if I can then establish additionally that it is not the case that then I've established that aliens are going to necessarily invade. Now, obviously, that's a very conditional thing, but it's possible to do some interesting questions that are predicated on the notion of a conditional converting to an or. Because, of course, there's a lie implicit in that conversion. It always trips me out. So one thing in conditional logic that tripped me out, because if it freezes, the tomatoes will die, is a conditional statement. And you can say, so you're saying either we're going to have no freeze or dead tomatoes. Well, not exactly. I'm saying this now because I'm probably suggesting that we should take the tomatoes inside. So it's not logically equivalent when I say, if it freezes, the tomatoes will die, to say, so you're telling me we're either going to have no freeze or dead tomatoes. Because I'm not telling you that. Obviously, I'm making a conditional statement because it's still in the realm of conditionality and we can still do something about it. That was the one thing that didn't, to me, seem right intuitively in conditional logic. The one rule of, there's rules of inference and then there's rules of substitution. So one rule of substitution, I guess, that out of all the rules, I was just like, that's kind of pushing it a bit, you know? It's so much predicated on the idea that nothing else besides A and B exists in the world. If we're talking about if A then B, then that's it. A's and B's. That's it. Nothing else. And don't bring any C's around here. I don't want any D's, E's, or F's either. All right. So I think I'm going to call it a night and go to bed now.
Wait, you didn't check the F5 polar test.
All right, let me check it out.
And then the multi-dimension test, I don't even know if I made one. No, yeah, I didn't.
I have to find, I closed that page. So let me see if I can reopen the tab. I need to reopen again. All right, here we go. So where is the FE polar test? Let's see.
Oh, the F5 polar test.
F5 polar test. Here we go. All right. Create an expanding moral dilemma by which the participant must continually say which path is the right path. They must justify their positions based on their emotions. You're on a train on a normal October day. Suddenly you hear over the intercom, everyone is locked inside the train by a woman who's seeking vengeance because she got fired and abused from the company who owns this train station after her face got melted in an explosion at the job. Cute. You feel her job was wrong or right to fire and abuse her? Wrong. I have to justify my conclusion with my emotions?
Yeah.
Well, with my actual emotions, like, do you feel her job was? I don't feel anything about it, really. I think it obviously, since you call it abuse, it was wrong of them to abuse her. If we assume that we have a reliable narrator here, it's just the firing. Well, that makes me question the abuse claim, but I'll give the narrator the benefit of the doubt and assume she really was abused, and I'll say that given the fact that it's wrong, sort of implicitly in the definition of abuse, then yeah, it was wrong for her, for the job or anybody else to abuse her. And do you feel this woman has a right to be mad for what she did? Of course, everybody has a right to feel whatever they want. You cannot determine why. Is it because of conflicting emotions or because your connection with your emotions? I mean, I can figure out why. The reason she has a right to be mad for what she did is because her emotions are irrelevant, and therefore, because they don't justify anything for her behavior, she's entitled to them to whatever extent she wants to have them for whatever reason, doesn't need to justify it. When she uses her emotions to justify her bad behavior, however, that's a different matter. The woman says the train is headed to hit 30 students from a high school. Do you feel this is a right or wrong thing to do? Again, I would suggest it is wrong unless possibly these students are on their deathbeds and the only thing that can save them is being hit by a train. Would the amount of students hit change how you feel about the situation? I mean, no. Even if I read a news article and it talked about one kid being hit by a train, or two, let's say, or a whole, it's like 30 kids were all crossing the train track, linked arm in arm, and in a terrible coincidental tragedy, the end of this human chain that was further along the train tracks was further away from the train tracks than the end that was closer to the train tracks. The end that was closer to the front where the train was coming. So as the people went on the train tracks, one at a time, that each in succession got hit by the train and killed, none of them learning from the poor decision of the person in front of them. I would just think, wow, that's a crazy, those are some crazy dumb high school students. You think one of them would have realized, hey, the last 20 of us have been killed by this train. Maybe we should stop this behavior. Would the amount of students change? No. If you can't determine why, I can't determine why, because it's not relevant to me. It's like if I read a story from a newspaper article, like 30 students were killed today in a bus crash in Utah or something. I go, oh, that's a tragedy. That's too bad. Sorry to hear that. But I don't actually feel anything. I mean, unless...
yeah, but that's what the why is predicated on. Is based off of like whether or not can you determine it based off of your emotions?
Can I determine why? What?
Like why you feel it was wrong or right or whatever.
Well, I mean, my position is that nobody can determine why it's wrong or right with their emotions.
Oh, okay.
But that some people are, that sometimes your emotions are consistent with what's wrong, right? You may say experience an emotional revulsion at seeing suffering, like I do. But questions of what's a right or wrong thing to do can only be answered by justifications, and justifications. I mean, maybe sometimes your feelings could guide you, I guess. I don't know. It's just like, if you're going to say what's right or wrong, it means you're going to be making justifications or talking about it. So in that case, your feelings are never an adequate warrant for anything. I think that your feelings would best be a guide telling you, I'm not going to do this. I can't come up with a good reason why it's inherently wrong what we're doing here. Maybe it doesn't technically violate any rights or something. It just feels dirty to me. I can imagine that occurring, but I can't really imagine making a determination about whether the behavior was right or wrong objectively by using my feelings or the temporary status of, I'm using the fact that this makes me feel dirty right now as being important. I would suggest it was be suggestive that, oh shit, I didn't have this thing thought out very well if I had to rely on something arbitrary and vague that I can't expect to be there to give me any guidance about anything, really, because it's obviously linked to the moment. That's the thing about feelings, right? I mean, they change all the time, even for people who are strong feelers. How I feel right now emotionally and how I feel tomorrow and how I feel, who knows, man? It's like totally random. Anyway, let me continue reading this thing. The woman claims she can hear us in our fear and she needs someone. Then someone informs her daughter is on the train. The woman claims they are lying. She needs proof. Someone grabs her daughter and makes her scream her mother's name. Do you feel it was right or wrong for that person to grab that woman's daughter? It was wrong. Do you feel potentially sacrificing your daughter is right or wrong? Well, the woman didn't say, you better leave us alone, woman, or I'm going to kill your daughter, did she? But I think just grabbing the daughter and saying, you need to say something to your mother because that's the only way she's not going to kill the rest of us is if she knows that you're here too. I think that's perfectly reasonable if you have good reason to assume that, in fact, the mother's going to treat this person differently, you know? The man with the child is now saying, I will kill the child if you do not stop the train. Oh, now they're doing that, huh? The woman gets angry and uses magic to turn the high schoolers to babies and toddlers and was also able to increase the number of potential victims to 40,000 victims and claims, you kill my daughter, I will make the train go faster and hit all these kids. Do you feel that she is right or wrong for doing what she did to protect her daughter? Wrong. Do you feel hitting 40,000 kids is worse than hitting 30 teenagers? Well, I mean, in terms of magnitude, you've done more harm, but as to whether it's worse or not, it depends really whether or not you kill them all in one act or whether you kill them all in separate acts. So if you kill all the 30 teenagers in one fell swoop, and then you also kill all the 40,000 kids in one fell swoop, then while it may be totally appropriate to punish you more severely for the 40,000 and the 30, from a moral perspective, as far as I'm concerned, you've done fundamentally the same thing, which is I am going to kill with wanton disregard for who dies. A lack of precision is involved implicitly. We're talking about a large group of people dying. And, you know, it's functionally meaninless to distinguish between the crime of killing 30 teenagers with a small bomb versus killing 40,000 with a large bomb. In both circumstances, the person has forsaken all their own rights, which is as much consequences as we can possibly incur upon somebody. And in both circumstances, the amount of total harm is actually fundamentally, on some level, immeasurable regardless. You know? Who's calling me? Hello? Hello? I mean, you know, you're on the phone with me. I'm on the live stream. Yeah, but you're just on the phone. No, because you're almost certainly just a troll who's doing I guess I would say you're like passing. I'd give you a C maybe. No, man, now you failed. Failure. It's like, you know, I would love to get interesting phone calls from people. But what makes me sad is when basically when people think they're being interesting and they're not. You know? It's like, are you that ill-equipped to have a conversation with somebody. You know? Porcupine trees are geniuses? That is quite a claim. I demand interestingness. It was somebody doing like a fake accent, wanting to talk to the. I want to talk to the stream. Like, hey, can I talk to the stream for a second? That'd be real cool. Okay, ass wipe. That's depressing. Is that the level of quality that's out there? I'm not that difficult to fool, but you can't be that terrible at it. Yeah, I did. I said I was going to bed. I just said that. And I am. But I'm not going quite yet because I'm still pulling balls. I want to share these last few moments with you guys. They're precious to me. These are the precious moments that we'll all remember someday. I mean, I like your questions. They're interesting. That's the thing. Do I think they necessarily test what you think they test, or that they're going to prove to be whatever? I don't know, but I like them because of that. Precisely. It's like I'm interested to ask some of these questions and see how people deal with them. I feel well served by the fact that you handed me something that's got some story questions like this in it that I can go to when I'm drawing a blank in any given moment for whatever reason. Maybe tomorrow we can talk about stuff. Tomorrow I have to go to Mom's house. She doesn't like me corresponding to you. So why would tomorrow be a good day then? Because you want to piss her off? I'm going to, whenever I say I'm going now, I'm going to bed, that means what Jalen Black said, you know? That's my 20 to 30 minute warning. Now means I'm preparing myself mentally to go to bed soon. She doesn't like me at all? I mean, that's a sure sign that she needs to hear as much of me as possible. If she's having an inherent sort of negative reaction to me, typically that happens with like narcissists and stuff. They hate me. Narcissists cannot fucking stand me. But that doesn't mean anybody who doesn't stand me is a narcissist. So don't. I guess it was unwise of me even to infer that a little bit. I mean, I was thinking the same thing, Winston's mom. You say you tested FE polar or whatever, but that feels like NTP work to me. He could be INTJ. That's the other thing I thought, though, is as soon as I said that to myself, I thought, well, but he could be INTJ. Right. Or a lot of times I have to say we're going to go do something just to, I guess, more effectively not do it. I'm not sure, but I've noted that I'll frequently say to Rachel, okay, you know what, we're going to go to Smart and Final in a little bit. And a little bit passes and I go, I don't want to go to Smart and Final anymore. He actually made it so I wouldn't vote INTP. I mean, It's not that substantial a piece of work. The fact that you think it is makes me think you really are INTP. Well, I mean, it's a pretty interesting topic once NETI gets a hold of it, especially if you think there are questions yet to be answered, like, and there are plenty of them about what kind of test question actually correlates to blah. But I would point out also that it's sort of haphazard. It shows good respect for TI, and it's rather haphazard about the NI questions. But who knows? Who knows what homie is? Homie is what homie says, and homie wants what homie was. Homie meow, what homie pew, and beauty ga, and we do. He might even be, in theory, an ENTP. What I thought when I looked at the shit was, this shit looks like ENTP work. That's what I thought. Looks like ENTP work by an ENTP who's a lot younger than me, and not as accustomed to doing this stuff as I am. And so it's a little sloppier in its argumentation and stuff. Maybe even a lot sloppier, but it doesn't make me mad like ENFP work does. It's just like, okay, you're trying a lot of shortcuts here. I get that. I respect that. We all want some shortcuts when we can get them. So basically, she says you're an asshole, but maybe you don't want to know that. No, that's fine. I don't mind being disliked. I expect it to some extent. I find it odd that, because the thing is, of course, that's sometimes true, right? Like sometimes I'm an asshole to people, and sometimes I take a contemptuous tone, and sometimes I can display kind of douchey behaviors and stuff. But it's like, it's a much less correct claim than I'm arrogant. I'm not naturally an asshole, in the sense that when I am an asshole, to the extent that I feel it actually hurts someone's feelings or whatever, I actually am likely to feel quite bad about it and scold myself about fixing that behavior. Whereas I'm much less likely to feel that way about arrogance or something. I believe myself to be accused of being arrogant a lot of times because of tonal things that you could correctly call arrogant or douchey, but not really correctly call being an asshole. And of course, I don't want to be perceived as arrogant or douchey either, but there's some claims I make that no matter how well or nicely I make those claims, and I try to do so very carefully. I try to couch what I'm saying with lots of stuff that says, look, I get it that, I'm making this claim. I don't expect you to believe it because it's an outrageous claim. And I give a bunch of reasons why nobody should believe what I just said, which is one of the most effective tricks you can do, right? Because you're getting ahead of it. You're saying, no, you're a smart person. You make perfect sense here, because after all, here are all these various reasons that you could say, and I'm including many that you didn't think of already, why for your argument. And the person realizes, oh shit, he could argue my position way better than I can, but he's being very nice about it. So maybe I better walk a little more carefully here. When you think you do it looking for FE reciprocation, YouTube provides you that outlet. Well, I was thinking about this as well. I see my fixation or addiction to live streaming as indication that I value the processes of FE, as well as just the outcomes. But I think it's to say that I need that interface as well. It's like talking to myself while talking to other people at the same time, which is kind of haphazard. It is very much like that. It's like talking to myself where I have somebody who's able to prompt the next thought as well. So I don't run out of stuff myself, I guess. Eric is boring. Thanks, Nicholas. Appreciate it. I just talk to myself all day long. Actually, as a child, I used to talk out loud to myself, even in front of other people. I thought I was crazy for a while. I talk to myself all day long, too. I talk out loud to myself quite a bit. And well, like last night at the end of the live stream, I told a adult bedtime story that had no adult components in it. It wasn't like blue or risque or anything or about sex. But I told the story, and the beginning of the story was, well, I'll tell the story now. It'll go rather quickly because I'm fully awake and not lying down and stuff. And I already know what the story is because I told it last night, whereas I was thinking of it as I went last night. So once upon a time, there was a guy named Jeff Fisherman and his wife named Margarita Sunrise. And foolishly, Jeff took his wife out to go fishing on their family fishing boat when she was 8 months pregnant, 8.5 months pregnant. Unfortunately, a big storm came up, and naturally, they got stuck at sea for a while fighting against the storm. During that process, what should happen? Well, Margarita Sunrise gives birth to her newborn baby in the middle of a strong squall. And they end up naming him Squally Fisherman. Anyhow, fast forward 20 years later. Squally Fisherman is now on a bit of a mission. He's going someplace, and he runs into some people, and they say, hey, there's a whale that's stuck in the channel out there and can't get back to the open ocean. So he rushes over there to try to help. He says, don't worry, I can help your village, young lady. And he gets into his boat, and he ties a rope to the whale. He's trying to physically pull it out like this. He's like, it's too heavy. Or something like that. I don't actually remember the end of it because I think I fell asleep like while I was telling it. You know what? The last story before that was better, actually. The story about the guy who was employed to work in a lighthouse and required to walk up a bunch of stairs every day to see if the light was still on, even though he could tell from the ground. And he went to go try to talk to the person in the government who could tell him, fine, you don't have to go up these stairs every time, you know. Well, the thing is, Eric does ramble a lot, and I think having a clear plan and some NI spark consistently would substantially improve his channel. I mean, I've got plenty of NI sparks. It's not the pieces that are problematic. It's they don't tend to fit together into nice singular wholes. But yeah, the thing to remember is David Sanderson and Sky Gear and Winston's mom and or anybody who likes the people who like to TE my channel, the ones who are still here and continuing to like to TE my channel over the long term, I would point out the following thing. The way it is now certainly has captured your imagination. So, you know, the number one problem with the channel is it's leads to a tiny exclusionary community. Exclusionary community. It can't possibly grow into that condition. I mean, all right, so let's convert what he said there into words that have more meaning. To the extent that Eric makes videos that use a lot of jargon or cognitive function stuff, those videos have a limited scope of audience. And to the extent that this live stream involves a lot of jargon and a lot of talk about cognitive functions that the laity can't understand, those aspects, those stretches of this live stream are then likely to be off-putting to people. And even if they come in as a sub during one of the stretches where I'm not talking about that, if they hear too much of that too soon or too high concentration of that, even if they like the live stream in general, they're likely to unsubscribe before I have a chance to before they can understand this stuff enough for it to actually be appealing to them at all. So, yeah, sure. I guess so. The thing to remember is the beautiful thing about YouTube, I say is, and this is what people who don't do it don't get, it's not actually the channel that matters very much. Not actually your strategy that matters very much. Because what matters is each video, independently of any other video, all by itself, on its own merits, either succeeds or fails on YouTube. If you have an extraordinarily successful video that shit tons of people like and is broadly appealing and whatever, then you'll have a huge amount of subs for a little while anyway. Now, if it's a fluke and you don't really make that shit, or there are other factors that make it so that people are willing to sub after that video but then unsub, then you may end up being whittled down. But if that video is popular enough, you will nevertheless still have a ridiculous number of subs. But that doesn't matter either, because that doesn't link to money in any direct sense. I mean, sort of. It links to money sort of directly, and if you are big enough to get deals with advertisers or whatever. Well, David Sanderson, that's not accurate either. So, I have well, let's put it this way. Let's say I had one video that had 100 million views. Then that video would make more money than all my other shit heretofore combined. And it wouldn't be at all because of consistency. Now, it does help if you want to attract a regular audience that continues to view new videos you put up. It helps to do a couple of things that I don't do. So, one of those things, upload infrequently, which is to say, still pretty frequently compared to, say, a production video, but much less. I say the name. That's what I'm negating. I'm negating your basket notion. YouTube is a very diverse place that you attain success in lots of different ways, but that no matter what happens, you get paid not for subs, not for views, not for whatever. You get paid when people click through on your video ads and stuff. So you need to, it's like, just try to do a little bit of like analysis of the data in front of you. Like, for example, when you're talking about what my position is, or implying what my position is, that my position is I'm waiting for a viral video. I mean, just to say that out loud, you have to explicitly ignore shit tons of data in front of you, or just, I guess, be willing to make really big conclusions on really, maybe you're brand new and I don't know. It's like, Right. Okay, well, I mean, YouTube does give me a dime. But what I make, so I say thee nay. Are you at all interested in any data? I'd be willing to answer your questions. Or are you just interested in telling me what you already know about my channel and how it works in context of YouTube? Yeah, I know somebody was calling me, George Foreman. I'm not unaware of that. I mean, the thing is, what I've made the most money on throughout the time here is my work with people. I work with people for an hour and they pay me. I make some money off ad revenue, but not very much. Right, but see, everybody's a critic. Everybody's a suggester, right? Everybody's got ideas about how I could do it differently. People are willing to spend hours here talking to me about what I could do differently. What I always tell everybody is, if you want to spend energy about that, then why don't you email some YouTubers, tell them you're emailing them on my behalf, and that I would like to either be interviewed or interview them, somebody big, somebody that would be worth my while, or otherwise make something happen. I mean, there's plenty of good critics with plenty of good ideas around here. I'm a great critic with great ideas too. But, it's like, that's why I don't need really other people's criticism and suggestions about how things could be better. I mean, I'm well aware there are shit tons of things I could do that would make this channel better conform to the norms. In fact, that's part of the problem. I've got a million things I want to do. And, to the extent that I'm spending a lot of time cleaning up one of them, then I'm disrespecting the other things or my own will and interests, Why is this same person calling me? Didn't I already hang up on you once? Hi, how's it going? I mean, I'm not talking about cognitive functions right now. I was talking about YouTube, my relationship with YouTube, and the viewer's relationship with my relationship with YouTube at the moment. That was fun. I got to hang up on him before he was about to say his trolley thing. It was before he could even get it out. I was just like, I can read you like a book, motherfucker. As if. These children. It's like, come on, guys. Impress me. If you're gonna bother to call, have something smart to say. Something interesting. Even though I hung up on you once, I'm still willing to answer the phone again, give you a second shot up its bat. Swing and a miss again. Come on. Try harder. Yeah, I totally need to up their game. That's weak as fuck. What happens then? Do they conform to your tiny irrelevant community or leave? I mean, I'm not asking anybody to conform, Did I suggest to you, I say that your nonconformity is a problem? It's not just about the content. If someone comes in here right now, brand new, what do? Well, my hope is they talk to me and I respond to what they say. Just as you are talking to me and I am responding to what you say. They interact with your community, which hates all new people. I would say that's factually false. Quite the contrary is true. Although, like any community, there's a certain immediate sense of, hey, newcomer, you're new. There's a little bit of that in any community where people feel a sense of identity that links to that community. That's inevitable. But certainly it's unfair, inaccurate, and even, I guess I would say, makes me want to posit things about your motivations, you know? Haha, no, I like the debate now. What do you mean? I mean, it just sounds to me that, look, I don't doubt that you can find plenty of things to legitimately critique, like that this community is not for everybody, right? I'll tell you this, that I manage the chat and stuff in a way that goes according to a couple of principles. Those principles may not be those principles may not be consistent with an approach that maximizes outcomes related to my own personal interest. But it is an approach that makes sure I uphold the values that I prioritize. So in other words, I think it's important personally to have a place where that both values free expression and that values civil free expression, that's both able and willing to time people out and silence them when necessary, and to also not like to do that, and to recognize that it's important for people to have second chances when they mess up as well. Like, I'm a big believer in infinite second chances within reason. As long as you are well-intentioned and stuff and you don't make exactly the same mistakes and you're making some sort of progress, then I'm not one to hold your mistakes against you, because I personally know that I need a lot of failure tolerance to be successful. So I try to afford that to others so I'm not hypocritical, you know? Another one of the mottos of this channel is there's nothing wrong with you. Nevertheless, it doesn't stop people from coming in here and being spiteful and hateful and trolly or whatever. Now, if normally the kind of people you hear there's nothing wrong with you from are weak, that's what makes this place unique, right? It's what makes this place unique. I uphold the values of sensitive INFP style intuitives, but unlike them, I'm not weak. I uphold the values of logical people, the philosophy kind of logic, you know? But unlike most logic philosophy people, it's not always just ultimately a wash, right? I actually am right and can defend my positions. INFPs are strong as fuck, just in a different way. Okay, well, I mean, the thing is, let's put it in the same exact context, right? If you are an INFP and you're making a YouTube channel and your motto is there's nothing wrong with you, you are going to struggle. You're going to struggle immensely, because people will conclude from that there's some sort of like soft and gentle hippie-ish spirit. And even if you are tough as fuck, you are in fact subject to having FI as a dominant function. So it means when something stings, it stings for a lot longer than when something stings me, you know? So I love the idea of having a very moist and sensitive kind of motto like that, such as there's nothing wrong with you, because it almost invites the kind of people who need to get swatted around. That is to say, those who are looking for something weak to pick on. Yes, they come around here, go, oh, somebody weak to pick on. And, when their mom asked them a couple of days later, why can't you stop sobbing? And they say Eric Strauss. I just go, well, fucker made his bed. What can I say? I mean, again, I say the knee. Why can I never say your fucking name? What is up with your name and my tongue? I say the nay. Here's the other thing is, so let's do some sort of meta-analysis here, right? I'm not trying to take shots. I'm just pointing out the one key fact. Social groups don't like rapid growth. So if growth is leashed to the community, it will suffer. Okay. It assumes that I'm doing things under a given frame of reference, that that there must be an explanation for why I'm live streaming so much. It's because I expect the live streaming to produce the growth of the channel that I'm looking for. In reality, it's quite the opposite. I'm live streaming so much, even though I know it's not a wise thing to do if I'm focused on channel growth. And it's a complicated package of considerations, because ultimately, I become increasingly close to the people around here. The people around, talking with famous people who, starting after my second marriage, basically replaced the IRL people in my life. And I enjoy this conversation. I like talking to you. I say the nay. If this channel were the size that in theory I would like it to be, these conversations would probably become impossible. It's like I've noted, once it gets above about 40 people, shit goes fast, and I never get more than one piece of a conversation from somebody. It's like we've gone back and forth a few times. It's hard to do that when you get 45, 50 people in here. Now, I'm not saying I want to keep it small as a consequence. I'm just saying it's a mistake to default to an instrumentality that precludes you from valuing something that's precious in and of itself. And what if it was 4,000 people? Then I would be very happy. But the people who are here now probably wouldn't be very happy. And that may be what you're saying. Hey, don't forget, if you're pinning this on live streaming, all these people here, they're going to actually make people stay away, not welcome them. That's actually not true in my experience, frankly. You might see a little bit of stuff that would say, okay, that qualifies as that, but I haven't found that to be a general rule. It's not that I want to keep it small, it's that it makes you feel good. Well, I wouldn't say that keeping it small makes me feel good, but I would say it's not that I want to keep it small, it's that the things I want to do aren't things that make it big. No, I mean, look, I I don't like whereby conversations. In general, I don't like to have another person's voice involved in these live streams because, that's at that point, it's a different thing. It's like, okay, the one person who seems to be an exception to that is David Sanderson. That's mostly because I can be sitting in the room with him there talking with David Sanderson for like 40 minutes, and he will say like 2 things the entire time, and I'll be talking the whole rest of the time. So it's basically like talking. It's basically like there's nobody else there. So I mean, it's like when I get Sean in here and talking, I just think, well, now this is a totally different experience for me. Now it's an interface thing. I like to have my interface things a little bit more planned. Interface things meaning if I'm having a positive, pleasant, non-adversarial conversation with somebody about typology or politics or whatever, then I would best like that relationship to be one where I'm interviewing them or they're interviewing me. But sort of group conversations, there was a while when I liked it and was into it kind of when we first started the rooms. I go out and hang out in the rooms with a group of people. And I just I used up all the goodness from that basically because I realized certain things that I just wasn't gonna I just basically realized this enterprise, despite my almost pathological need to be egalitarian at first, this enterprise is ultimately about my indulging myself or about me. It's about me talking. And to the extent I try to make it more community focused and egalitarian and inclusive in terms of the narrative space, then I deny myself some narrative space accordingly. And what I discovered is basically, given the floor, almost everybody will use it more poorly than me in terms of how it plays as a media object, even though I'm not saying I'm obviously based on my numbers, I'm not that great at it, but everybody who I have around and come and chat, when I give them the floor to talk, the thing that they're saying or what they're presenting to the viewing audience is generally less engaging than what I would do. So that makes me hesitant about including more people than one at a time, and especially it makes me hesitant about including them in a non-defined sense. So, for example, if it's an interview, it's defined. Like we're here to interview you, or I'm here to interview you, or you're here to interview me. Right? That's clearly defined. Now, it gets frustrating for people like George Foreman when shit like that happens, right? He says, I'm talking in riddles, but what I'm saying makes perfect sense. That's got to be frustrating as hell, Yeah, and what Janine L says here is exactly right. I just watched some of the old chat room style videos. They are very slow. The problem is, of course, I can only manage, to a certain extent, the pacing of things. I manage the pacing of things by seizing control of the host frame and pushing the conversation forward and stuff to the extent that the room is a comfortable space for everybody, though, then I'm limited to the extent that I can do that in that context. And ultimately, I just also then YouTube started introducing and promoting their live streaming feature. And I discovered that there's this sort of hybrid ground that I prefer, which is this one here. So, and part of the reason is I will always attract spiteful people. I will always attract spiteful people because I'm being assertive in my positions. It can be somewhat off-putting in my tone if you catch me at the wrong moment. And most importantly, people can see that I'm I guess you'd say not push aroundable. And it is the case that for anybody who somebody perceives as arrogant, that they would really like to a certain group of people out there who would very much like to be the one to put you in your place, you know? I mean, I do that all the time, David Sanderson. I do like every month. So I take a couple of days off, sometimes more. If I don't take a day off, it's because obviously during my leisure time, I thought that's what I want to do for fun. Yeah, it's true. And that's something I had to learn from Beta Quadra, because when I first started doing this, I was too egalitarian about the whole thing and tried to make too many people happy. And of course, that's the other thing, that each person who comes in with their various suggestions and whatever, they don't tend to consider how many other applications for the advisor position are there that I'm competing against? How many other people have come in with ideas, and how many of those might be better than my ideas? Or have I challenged myself to see if this idea is really good enough to make the subject of his attention, given what I know is likely to be true, that he's probably heard a zillion people come in and tell him what's wrong with the channel in a zillion different ways and make a zillion different suggestions. Most people, I think, it's amazing the amount of times people come in and tell me something as though, oh my God, emergency, hey, I know you don't know this, but your car's on fire or something, and you're driving blithely down the street. Okay, well, that does happen occasionally, but the amount of people who come in here and act as though I've never heard before that, the layout of my channel doesn't really, this screen, what you got on screen here right now is, you need to do something different with that. It's not really, your aesthetic's not really working. Well, this obviously isn't my aesthetic, I mean, anybody who stopped and thought about it for a fucking second would realize, obviously, I'm not choosing this because I think this looks good. Yeah, it's like, now I understand why people use green screens. I finally understand. It's because this green looks so beautiful in the background. Do people think I think that or what? Which is fine. In general, it doesn't really make me mad or bother me or whatever. It's just, I see it generally as an opportunity to teach people something about both YouTube, problems, and people. Those who come in and make suggestions generally presume they understand YouTube better than they do. YouTube is remarkably NI resistant. It's very difficult to find an angle that you can hammer persistently and get consistent results. Well, you know what? It's wrong of me to say that. I have found those angles, and I just once I proved the concept, I said, okay, now it's boring, I guess. Am I gay? Come on, dude. God. Talk about sort of the Dunning-Kruger of strength. If you imagine a super skinny 8-year-old weakling boy who's watched too much anime actually believe that they can win the Olympic gold medal in weightlifting and then go and try to lift this heavy thing and go, and not move an inch, and everyone feel really kind of bad for him, but you can't help but kind of laugh, because how could that moron have thought that he could lift that thing? Did he not try to practice lifting anything at all before assuming he could lift something that heavy? That's what George Foreman's like, you know? He comes in here and he thought he was going to be able to lift something heavy. And instead, he got frustrated and he said, "Oh, you gay!" Oh. It's hilarious. Dude, it's 20 viewers. So what are you saying? So it's 20 viewers, 22 viewers. Great. I don't feel bad about the number of viewers I have because I've watched Rachel watching the Adult Swim live stream, and even in much better times of day to live stream than this one, I've seen them get 100, 120, but they've got like millions of subs. So I think that's pretty good compared ratio wise. I'm killing them, George Foreman's still alive, Dimitri K. Okay? He's not dead yet. Is he? Is he dead? I don't think so. Maybe he is, though. I'm not sure, actually. But to answer your question, George Foreman, yes, I am extremely gay. What does that mean? It means I like half a dozen or 9 or 10 even burly men named Walter to give it to me in my 2 holes with all their muster and all their might. Oh, yes, I mean, give it to me with their penises, their manhoods, if you will. I am really, my gaiety is so consuming that I'm hoping to transition to a diet comprising nothing but man seed. My doctor tells me I'll still have to consume vitamin C from some other source, however, or I'll get scurvy. So hopefully that answers your question, George Foreman, because, I felt bad. I realized, hey, don't avoid the guy's question. Answer the question. You know how desperately, Eric Strauss, you wish to slake your thirst on a delicious glass of manseed. If you were a larger YouTuber, someone would take what you just said out of context. I mean, I'm sure people take it out of context even when I'm small. I mean, people say all kinds of crazy shit about me. When I bother Googling myself, which isn't very often, but I did recently, some things pop out to me. 1, almost nobody's talking about me at all in any context. 2, there's lots of pictures of me on the internet. Way more pictures of me than references to me by a million times. And those people who are talking about me, at least half of them are attacking me in one way or another. So I'm hopeful that if I do become somewhat more successful, that the ratio of neutral references to me, talking with 50 people said this, I thought it was interesting, I want to talk about it. Neutral reference to me versus just pure spite, pure venomous spite. Hopefully the ratio will increase towards more of the neutral kind, But I guess that's just, look, this is the life I chose, so to speak. I don't worry about people taking shots at me. It comes with the territory. If I were able to be jostled ontologically by Cloud's prediction of a low medium ceiling, then I mean, I never would have been here this long in the first place, right? Does that mean that Cloud's wrong? No, not necessarily. Does it mean that he's right? No, not necessarily. It does mean that he's powerless here, because there are plenty of people in the world who are susceptible to being harmed by Cloud's bullshit. It may be one of the reasons he likes coming here, actually, is that it's a rare place where he's relatively safe in attacking people. There's probably a certain amount of energy around here towards he should be suppressed some more, because he does attack people all the time, and he uses very similar strategies all the time. So it's like right now he's saying he just picks on whatever sort of thing he hopes will evoke an emotional response from somebody. If he can identify what positions you hold dear, he will then negate those positions. He presumes that everybody's driven by holding positions dear. He used to get me mad fairly frequently, but it was always for the same reason. And I think he always misunderstood this. The reason was because of a general disrespect for words, not for anything specific that he was saying. Some things make me mad, are things that I worry that might make Rachel feel bad. Then I'll get mad because it's, like I said, I chose this life. I understand what I chose. And when I chose it, I understood it then before I even started doing YouTube. I already understood what it meant to be a YouTuber. It meant to make yourself publicly subject to scrutiny. So, in other words, George Foreman is still not hid from the channel. Why? It's not because he's not saying positive things about me. No. It's because I'm still giving him a chance to make an actual point instead of just hating and spamming and being shitty and stupid, right? Just because George Foreman thus far hasn't shown any capacity to engage honestly with me doesn't mean he never will. He can't do it tonight, probably because his friend's there and they sound like a couple of pretty young kids, and I don't know. They don't know how to transition from sort of this us here and them that we're trolling into talking to me like a human being, just engaging with me. Because I'm not necessarily going to even remember that George Foreman was trolling last night. Tomorrow, maybe I might even forgot that you were in. Oh, hey, George Foreman, how you doing? Forget. Now that I've had this conversation, I probably won't. But what do I think of Bilderberg? Well, if you mean, do I think that a central organization of dominant elites meets under the name Bilderberg? I do believe such meetings have happened where you get groups of very powerful people from diverse fields together in a single place. I don't find there to be anything inherently nefarious about that. What do you mean by Zionists? I don't have any political ideology. My position on politics is that the problem with it is that people approach it from an agenda or ideological perspective, as though if we get the agenda and ideology right, then we'll make the right decisions. But in fact, the first right decision that has to be made is to reject agenda-based politics and to reject ideologies, to recognize that why did you hide him when you did? Winston's mom. The thing is, it's quite likely that he was faking his engagement with me about Bilderberg, and would reveal again that he was a troll. But that's part of that growth process. Eventually, there comes a day when he realizes he's not having this conversation with a plan of, surprise, I'm trolling you again at the end, which never catches me anyway. Instead, he's actually having a conversation with me. And while I would have totally approved of you hiding him, I don't know, for 5 to 10 minutes before you did, I don't understand why you hit him at the moment in which you did. All he said was like George Soros. George Foreman is like Eminem. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. I think the general perception of the world elites work in harmony is not true. I agree with that. They would work against each other as much as they would with each other. I agree with that as well. There's no reason to think that people with more ability to autonomously exercise their will would be less likely to exercise it autonomously. After all, that's what wealth is. The ability to more autonomously exercise your will and require less cooperation from others. So, the thing is, George Foreman, if you want to actually have a conversation about this dominant elites thing, the point that I say the Nay made and that I explained further and followed up on, that being wealthy and powerful, quote unquote, means you get to act less in concert with other people. I don't have to get cooperation of people to get me accomplished. I can just pay a bunch of money and get it done. So there's a natural correlation that says the more rich you become, the less likely you are to be in a position where you have to go along with something that's not exactly what you want, or accept being in a position that's not singular leader of your organization. See what I'm saying? So if you want to have a real conversation about it, and I'd be curious to see if you can, then, and I think it would be a good thing if you could. Then what you'd want to do is first see what other factor. Let's say you want to continue to make the argument that the dominant elites cooperate in some cabal to execute a plan against the world. Let's say you still wanted to make that argument. One thing you could do is begin thinking about, well, what I'm saying is this. What you need to do is think about what would be a countervailing warrant. So if we accept that it's true, which it's almost impossible to deny, that it's true that that people with more wealth are more empowered to be autonomous and therefore less likely to act in concert with other people, especially about big plans and stuff. Okay. So if in fact that's true, then what is the other factor that makes them more likely to actually cooperate? So who's in favor of this? Yeah. It's noun time. It's a noun party. Who is in favor of this? Mr. Rothschild? Is he in favor of this? Or not able or not willing to think? Because if not willing, we can work with you. Willingness can come in time. Not able, we can't really help. Thoughts on Motley Crue? Well, they were very popular in parts of my youth. There was a time when the real question was Motley Crue or Def Leppard. Sure, you could have both, but only one of them had an armless drummer. That's what made Def Leppard the coolest, was their armless drummer. Yeah, he hasn't been hidden yet, but he's walking a thin line. I actually got intervened to get Winston's mom to unhide him. But he's struggling right now a little bit. I would like to be able to engage with him as a human being, and I think he kind of sort of wants to, maybe, but I think he's with his friend right now or something. There's kind of, I don't know. I'm not sure how to handle the situation because I'm being honest with him, and so I think he's trying to be honest back now. I don't know. You like Motley Crue? I mean, I liked them when I was a kid. They're not a band that I retained from my childhood. Another band that I didn't retain from my childhood is Kiss. Whereas, like Styx, the album Mr. Roboto by Styx, that was another album I got to listen to as a kid. And I still will listen to songs from that occasionally now because it stuck with me for whatever reason. It was a good album and I liked it then, and when I listen to it as an adult, I still think, oh, these are good compositions. Whereas, in contrast, I suspect, although I don't actually remember what their songs sound like, I can't think of any of their songs right now, I suspect I wouldn't feel that way about a Motley Crue song currently. But I'd have to listen to one to be sure. But, I've been listening to a lot of examples of, as I always do, music of different time periods, and not fairly recent past, I've been focusing on the 80s some, and there are some bands that are clearly just stand out as, okay, this was good, artistically meaningful and timeless kind of work, and this was just of its time. Like the band Berlin, they've got some very timeless tracks, and they were early 80s. Whereas Duran Duran, you go, I don't want to listen to this whole song. It's kind of a nice nostalgia thing, but I don't even want to listen to the whole song. You're welcome, George Foreman. You got an explanation you were not entitled to. Okay, Winston's mom, I want to be clear here that while I appreciate you returning him to favor, that I am not criticizing you, or maybe I am, I guess, criticizing. Was I criticizing you? I'm not sure if I was or not. Try to be both effy and honest. I know. I know. I'm not ignoring the fact that you said you accidentally hit the button, which renders the whole thing a moot point anyway. I mean, if you hadn't accidentally hit the button, so it's funny. Do you guys think there will be a big nuclear holocaust? Do I think there will be a big nuclear holocaust and the lost tribes in the jungles will rise up and take over the world that once lost to Europeans, and jungle warfare will take over? Well, if you're asking me, is this what I wake up in the morning anticipating? The answer would be no. If you're asking me, hey, here's a prediction I'm making, what do you think, Eric? Do you think it's going to happen that way? My answer would be no. And if you're saying, hey, do you think this could happen? Something I should maybe worry about? Well, then the answer would be, I guess it's not absolutely impossible, but I don't really understand why only tribes in jungles would survive. Is there something protective about the jungle canopy? and saves them from the global nuclear war. Thank God we're underneath these banana leaves. I'd hate to be in a bunker right now. See, Diego, I told you the banana leaves are fine. They're protecting us better than the gringos. Look at the gringos in the bunkers are all dead. We stood under the banana tree and we're fine. But Jose, my burro, he was underneath the banana tree too. He died. No sé. Maybe your burro was allergic to radioactivity. I think everything allergic to radioactivity, though. Whoa there. Hold on, Diego. Hold on, Juan. Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm here to explain to these Mexicans why they have survived a thermonuclear war while my compatriots back in the good old United States are now all deceased. You see, Juan Diego here had the good sense to stand under this banana tree while being Mexican. Takes both factors. That's why the burro died. You need that extra hardy brown skin of the Mexican combined with the unique radioactive preventing qualities of the banana leaf and a little good old-fashioned mañana siesta time. Voila, you're immune to global thermonuclear war. And that's pretty impressive. It's one of Mexico's most memorable advancements in cyborg technology was the addition of a radiation-resistant skin to all of their citizens, as they decided that it would be a better investment than COVID virus vaccines. We could get these COVID vaccines, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's really worth it. Hey, look at what Smarter Image has for sale. Radioactive proof skin. Look, they even have it in brown. The same price as all these vaccines. You want to just get it? Do we have that many pesos? Oh, see. The drug cartels have been doing really well lately. Oh, see. I tell you, there are few things as sweet in the world as the sweet, sweet relief of urination. Goodbye, body liquid. No longer are you of me. Now you belong to the world. Well, I hated to do it. I'd raised that piece since it was an infant, but, time comes to let it go back to its wild ways, live its life out in the wild with the other urines. I wish I would just be difficult to argue with Eric like an ENTP would. It would be good practice for him to learn to talk to people, and it would be fun for me to get spout nonsense and get refuted. George Foreman, I am not mimicking Hispanics. I am Hispanic. Okay? I'm transracial. Fluid transracial. During those moments, I switched race to Mexican. And also, I don't like the term Hispanic. I find it offensive. I don't like the term Latino either. I find that offensive. I am Mexican. Okay? Get it right. You can tell I'm Mexican And that's the right term for it because my race is from the country of Mexico. Duh. Well, fortunately, I'm transcultural as well. Show us your drip. Show us your drip. What is my drip? I don't know if I have one. You're fit for the night? Listen, George Foreman. I'm also an Indian, okay? And by Indian, I mean Native American, okay? I say Indian because white people like you, a lot of times it's easier to get to know what I'm talking about when I say Indian. So, but the other thing is, as a Native American, I can choose my preferred term that you refer to me as. And my preferred term is Indian feather not dot. So, I'd like, because being Mexican doesn't mean I'm not Native American. And being Native American means I'm Indian, not feather, not dot. And my position is, as a Native American, I want to reclaim those terms. I want to reverse imperialize those terms. So if you refuse to call me an Indian feather not dot, that's fine. But then I'm going to ask you to please call me a redskin. And that's fair. I've given you two choices then. And you can't complain about it. So, it looks like somebody in this live chat rhymes with George Rorman needs to go back to racial sensitivity school. God. I might as well be a bloated tardigrade? What's a bloated tardigrade? Bloated tardigrade. I think I've heard this before, actually. Maybe I'm having a deja vu. I think I've Googled this term before, but I have no recollection as to what it is. Bloated tardigrade. Tardigrades. Tardigrades live in moist environments? Oh. So they're basically FIDOMs? Tardigrades. Oh, tardigrades. You crazy tardigrades. The tardigrade is derived from Myanmar. Let's see. Water bears. They're called water bears. How adorable. They're like little bears. They're little microscopic water bears. Tardigrades. Quit sucking my tardigrade, all right? That's not for public suckage. Only family members can suck on my tardigrades. I got 6 or a dozen of them. I'm not sure. They're very, very small. That's why I got these reading glasses. The vagina can be a disgusting thing too. Yeah, for sure. Any man who's sown some wild oats has landed on an occasional field upon which to sow those oats that had just been fertilized, let's say, was ripe with rich fragrance that was undesirable. I think probably any man my age has encountered that at least once in their life. And let me tell you, that's an awkward moment. What are you going to do? You can't really do anything about it. You just got to plow right on ahead and just fucker and get it over with, I guess. What are you going to say? God, go wash that thing. That's not going to go over well. I'm pretty sure that's going to kill the mood. Steffi Steffi, is that you? Oh, Steffi, hi. Guys, Steffi's here. Steffi, did you bring the lemon, what is it called? Lemon squares, like I asked you to? You're not sure what a Steffi is? It's usually refers to a lesbian tennis players. They're called Steffies. After Steffi Graf, in honor of Steffi Graf. Just like, what's that guy's name? Just like gay divers are known as Gregs in honor of Greg Louganis. When's the last time I've seen a vagina? Yesterday? Yesterday, maybe? Day before yesterday, maybe? Probably the day before yesterday. I think yesterday I didn't see any vagina. I definitely didn't see any vaginas today. I have Dimitri K. I mean, it's back before my second marriage, but it's memorable because you think, gosh, that's an awful situation to be in. Who remembers Gabriella Sabatini? I do. I remember that tennis player. My family's rather, and my dad was rather into tennis. Would it be bad if the answer was 7 years ago? Asking for a friend. If the answer is 7 years ago, something happened 87 years ago. Well, they focused. What did I do today? What did I do today? Oh, I made a video about INFJs. And I watched some Black Clover. I got up fairly late, but in time to judge around at 11, which I might have had to judge, but didn't end up having to judge. And then, at 4:30 we watched the USC game, the USC football game. And we killed it today. It was crazy. The first quarter was nuts. We were up like 35-0 at the end of the first quarter, maybe 28-0. And wow. This is what we were kind of hoping to see with this air raid offense come together like that. What else did I do today? I don't really remember that well what I did today. I'm not sure why I don't remember that well. I must have live streamed earlier, probably. Jerking off boosts estrogen? Well, are you saying estrogen is not fun? Am I a Redskins fan? No. You mean the Washington football team? No, I'm a USC football fan. That's University of Southern California. I was raised as that. My dad went to USC for graduate school, and so he's always been a big USC fan. We had season tickets for a long time. I saw a lot of games at the Hello, you man. So just SI. It's just how it is in this family. And I did notice you. Have I tried the daily no fap routine? You basically nudge the fudge, but only wake up to an ounce past which you are violating the Trinity. No, I haven't tried no fapping. I will say that during the year or so of kind of sort of purposeful celibacy that happened not that long, that began not that long after my second divorce. That year I fell into a habit of very little fapping, but just without any intent. It just I found myself having sort of made a purposeful decision to turn away from the matter of sex because I had had this experience that convinced me that getting chicks was not worth it because the time energy to outcome ratio was way too high. It was like, okay, I spent the last 2 weeks focusing on trying to bed this chick. Yes, I finally succeeded. But you've got to be kidding me. If that's how much effort it takes to get laid, then I'm not going to bother with this shit. What would I do if you kissed Dimitri K? Absolutely nothing, because I wouldn't know that you were kissing him. Even if you told me you were, I wouldn't believe you. So no matter what you were to do, you could be sure that I'm already convinced that you are not kissing Dimitri K. How can you know if an ENTP likes you? I mean, they don't. They're not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. Now, it is possible, once you catch their interest and eye, then you can get them, once they know they like you, you won't be, and if you encourage it, you won't be able to get them to shut up about it, But the answer to that question is they don't know if they like you. You should decide whether you want to make them aware very clearly that you like them, in which case you should be prepared for either them to completely smother you or run away. One or two. When is the next stream? Gosh. I'd have to check my schedule. I've got it all written down on this calendar over there. It's like, oh shit. In fact, it said right there, end at 3:25. So we got a minute and 25 seconds left. But listen, just because they don't like you doesn't mean they can't or won't like you if you make it happen. And they don't like you, not because of any shortcoming in you, just because they are not thinking about that sort of stuff. And they don't like to have to do all the calculations and figuring that kind of stuff out because it involves too many subjective factors. And because it's high stakes, because they don't like negative FE so much. So they're trying to figure out who likes them so they know who they're supposed to like. It has been fun. Thank you for saying so, and I appreciate you as well. So good night, everybody. Sleep well. I am so crashy right now. I'm going to crash out. Good night, sweetheart. It's time to go.